Hey, welcome to another episode of Ask Ed, and I'm going to remind you guys, you add questions to our shows by just making the question in the comments. That's awesome. And also, I don't show these questions ahead of time to Ed, so that's how this works. Hi, Ed.
So you're scaring me. All these questions. Good morning. Nice sunshine today.
It is. It's a great day.
Yeah.
And yeah, you've never been scared yet on any of these questions.
No, I ain't scared. You ain't scared me.
No.
I'm too old to get scared.
Yeah, right.
So it's kind of interesting. The questions they come up with was all good. There's no such thing as a bad question.
Yeah.
Or an unusual question. It's just the answer sometimes is a little difficult.
You're right.
But we'll figure that out.
Okay, good. So here we go. We're going to start right off with a question about transmissions, and we were just talking off camera about transmissions.
Okay, we were just talking about transmissions.
So Sonny is asking, what causes the cases of the Turbohydro 400 to wear out faster than the 350? Or do you even believe that that's true?
I don't think that's true.
Okay.
I don't see much Turbo 400 cases wearing out.
Okay.
Of course, usually the Turbo 400's got a lot bigger motor.
Okay.
They're behind the 454s, and then you start putting carburation and speed equipment on them and stuff. And again, it's like the case is being wore out. The other thing we've got on a 350 transmission, it's got teeth in the case. There's a whole bunch of teeth in the case that are locking.
Okay.
There's a drum that locks in there. And then down at the bottom of that drum, there's a heavy spring like a number 9 wire flattened out. It's a real curvy little wire spring that keeps that cluster of planetary gears locked in that transmission.
Okay.
And it's spring loaded. So then every time you put it in gear, that spring kind of eases that over and be good to the case.
Oh.
But every time it goes over, every time you shift it, it eats into that case. So sometimes that is eat into the case all around, and sometimes it shears the case right off on a 350.
Oh, really?
Takes all those lugs. There might be 30 of those lugs or 40, 35. I've never counted them.
Yeah.
But that spring is now it's in there and it's locked and we can't get it apart. So some of the cases we can get a screwdriver in there and unpush it back again. This is disassembled on a 350 case.
Okay.
Screw it back again and then push it out.
Okay.
And we take that spring out, and we go down to the tranny shop, and they give us a piece of steel, flat, heavy steel, made for this. I tell you, it looks like the same picture as the state of Texas.
Okay.
It looks like a piece of steel about 2 inches by 2 inches, the shape of a state of Texas.
Okay.
And we put that in the case, and that steel in there locks that thing, and it doesn't do anything to these worn out cases ever again.
Okay, so I'm
So
trying
that's
to...
called a case saver. Case saver.
Case saver.
And we put those in all of our 350 transmissions.
So when you say Texas, it's got points and jagged parts to it.
Yeah, it looks
Does
like
it kind of rotate into a space?
No, it just, there's a piece of steel. It looks like the state of Texas.
Okay.
And we just slide in that groove and put the case right in it.
Okay,
And the figures all lock in.
Okay.
Before they're all locked back and forth and wears that case right out.
So it acts like a spacer to hold it tight?
And this saves the case by putting this in that one lock.
Okay.
And it does affect that. But the Turbo 400 don't have that.
I see.
But I have to say, if he's worried about the Turbo 400, it's because, and we'll go back to the Turbo 400 too a little bit, it's the worst transmission General Motors ever made. We know that in the history.
Okay.
That when they first made them, almost every one of them came back.
Okay.
Until the race car guy got it.
Okay, what did race car guy do?
And the guy, as soon as he got it, he decided second gear was real weak. So he drilled a hole in the case and the separator plate. Made it bigger so it got more oil.
Huh.
He shifted up the spring and started drilling holes in it and making like a shift kit, the Turbo 400.
Okay.
Drilling holes in different. Now it shifts really and made it the best transmission ever.
So it went from the worst to the best?
Yeah, because the race car guy got it.
Uh-huh.
As soon as he got it, he started drilling holes in them.
You race car guys.
So just like I have, we were just talking a couple of minutes ago, I have all the things that we wrote out years ago with paper and pencil. With all the holes in the C4, C6, 904s, 940, same transmission.
740,
Follow
720.
all those holes and marked them with our paper, pencil and paper. Then we had a guy a girl print them all out for us too.
Uh-huh.
Exactly what those holes meant. We made our own shift kits because they weren't available.
And you designed them on paper.
Yeah, on paper. I have 2 copies of them, one with the pencil and then with the typewriter.
Okay.
And then I keep those kits and stuff. And so, anyways, today's with the transmissions with the 5, 6, 7, 6 speeds, you'd be months figuring out all those passages and which one to drill out and which one not to.
I see. A lot more complicated.
A lot more, really complicated. And so that's why I stay away from building those transmissions. And they have a lot of little things wrong with them that keeps failing. And until you figure out why that failed and correct that, whatever it might be, I don't know.
Yeah.
Then the transmission will still keep failing.
Yeah. Huh. Okay.
And especially with this lock-up torque converter, and then some of the electronics and Ford transmissions, magnets and electronic things to shift it, and all computer, and that's really weird because if the motor don't run right, the computer tells the transmission not to shift.
Right, and then it'll be stuck
It's
in
the
a
motor
lower
problem,
gear,
not the transmission. Yeah.
Yeah.
So next question. Let's get something.
Okay. Well, the problem is the next question's another transmission.
Oh, that's okay.
Question, but it's a different one.
Okay.
There's a guy named Tony, and he's asking or making a statement. You can see if you know what he's talking about. He said there was a transmission that looked just like a Powerglide, but it wouldn't shift automatically. You had to shift it manually. It was a kind of a cheaper version of the Powerglide. Do you know what he's talking about?
No,
Okay.
I don't remember. There's some of those. Was an Oldsmobile had some little real weird transmissions. Mm-hmm. And then that little Buick aluminum V8.
Yep.
I have one over here, a 215. It had a little transmission automatic about this long.
Wow.
About that big around. It was really weird looking.
Huh.
But
I've
I've never drove one of those cars to see what it was. It seems like maybe it's so weird in the output shaft, there's no place for a governor. They could have had to shift that by itself. And even our FMX transmissions, they were kind of 54 Ford with some of those weird things. That a 54 Ford V8, if you took off in first gear, low and with a hand on low gear, and you went to second gear, it would go into second gear, then you pulled it back into low.
Okay.
And it would stay in second forever.
Really?
Yeah.
So,
and then we'd push it back into drive and go into drive. So if you didn't know that trick, it was like a manually shift that transmission.
oh, really? Okay.
It was really cool to race it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Again, we went from low into second. The transmission shifted into second. And as soon as it did, we pulled it back into low. Now it would stay in second, wide open throttle.
So what was the reason to take it down to first again?
It stayed into second.
Okay. Oh, so it wouldn't shift
It
into
would
third.
not go on high.
Oh, I see now.
So we got going as fast as we wanted to go in second gear.
Okay.
And we could go into third, and we go into third.
Yeah.
It was a pretty cool transmission in those days.
Interesting.
I think that was an FMX or something.
Yeah. Huh. Now, going back to that Buick from those compact cars in the early 60s, I know some of them had the transmission in the back, a transaxle.
That was a transaxle on an F85. That's the one with that little 4-cylinder Pontiac motor we have over here.
That Tempest, yes, that's right.
Transaxle.
Yep, okay. But the Buick didn't do that.
No, it didn't do that.
And of course, the Corvair was a whole different story.
Yeah, the Corvair's a different thing, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Very good.
So it's a weird, yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to shift over to, no shifting. See, I didn't mean to say that. Next question's from Darren. And he's got a question about straightening crankshafts. And he said, when you're straightening it, is it a good idea to heat it up first or not, or just do it cold?
No, do it cold.
Okay.
I've never heated a crankshaft.
Okay. That's a simple answer.
The only reason it bent in the first place was usually throw a rod out of it, and the rod got caught between the connecting rod, between the block and the rod, and the crank. If something caught in there and twisted the crank, it's hard, almost impossible to bend a crank.
Okay.
Unless the motor completely come apart. That would be a race car that you motor in there, you got it with. Maybe a V8 and you got 5 connecting rods left.
Right.
You have a few that wasn't wasn't supposed to be in the right place.
Right. So when you're talking about straightening, it's
Yeah,
just
we just
slight
straightened it black. Yeah,
adjustment.
cold, never heated up.
Okay.
That would be, I don't know what, I just can't imagine it heating the crankshaft up.
Yeah, that would be a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question is, can you do a video? So it's a video request. Can you do a video on adjusting rods and versus lifters?
Adjusting rods?
And that was, the way it's written, it's a little bit, oh, wait a minute. I'm looking at the spelling of this. Adjusting Rhoads VMAX lifters. Do you know what a Rhoads VMAX lifter is?
Rhoads lifters?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're made. I think they was in Phoenix for a while, and I think he moved up north.
Okay.
In one of the up north somewhere.
Okay.
I don't think he makes Rhoads. We used to use them all the time.
Okay.
And they were just a machine lifter, simple.
Okay.
And they machined it so at idle, the lifter would bleed off. It wouldn't keep that. We'll just start at 80 pounds oil pressure, motor oil pressure. If that lifter bled off a little bit, a few pounds, then that lifter would become real cushy.
Okay.
It became cushy, it wouldn't seep up with the camshaft. So if you had a big camshaft with a high, long duration, then that would take all that sharpness out of the lifter.
Okay.
The lifter, or out of the cam. The lifter would go up over the lobe and would be just kind of mushy.
Okay.
At idle. As soon as you speeded the engine up, maybe the oil went up to 5 pounds more, and it would, that machine little crack at the galley that they put in the lifter, groove that bled that oil off, would fill up and become a normal lifter.
Okay.
So at idle, they all clattered a little bit.
Okay. So
I think as far as adjusting it,
yeah,
I would adjust it just like I would before. And I'm always with a hydraulic lifter, say Chevrolet lifters most of the time, there's about a quarter of an inch of lifter tolerance in there. If you put the push rod in a lifter, brand new lifter, and find out how far you can push it down with no oil in it, it'll run just as far as each end if it's off that end thing a little bit.
Okay.
So actually, the lifter could be adjusted about 4 turns.
Okay.
And in that area is all the same.
Okay.
So I would adjust the lifter on the bottom. I like it. So you'd almost adjust the lifter, run it down to held the valve open, and back it up a half a turn.
Okay.
So then it would be almost down to the bottom, would be a solid lifter then.
Yeah. Okay. So you're almost getting a solid lifter out of a hydraulic lifter.
That's right.
Okay.
It can't bleed off.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I don't know if we're going to be able to do
it's a little bit, I don't know if technically, if that helps you on just the lifter, but that's what the Rhoads lifters are.
Okay. If you happen to have some Rhoads lifters sitting around and we want to do a video someday, maybe we will.
Yeah.
But in the meantime,
there's always a question about how to adjust lifters, and each guy says a half a turn, 3/4 of a turn or something. And
yeah. And you go a little further than that on those.
I would go, sometimes I run mine if I'm real careful with them, 2 turns.
Okay.
That puts the lifter right in the middle of the plunger right in the middle of the lifter. Oil on both sides.
I see. Okay, and that's what you're doing there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay, good question. Turkey Boy. I love some of these names. Turbo 400, he said there's a notch where you can grind on the valve and plug a vent hole and give you low gear full time.
It's probably on the modulator valve.
Okay.
You grind on the modulator valve and any instructions there, yeah. And the modulator valve holds that low gear.
I see.
Won't let it shift in a second.
Okay. And then he said there's another mod where you can make second gear selectable from a stop. So if it's slippery, some people, on ice or snow, people like to start in second gear.
Yeah. I don't know.
We're in Arizona. We don't know this stuff.
Each guy has his own theory about which kind of shift kit to put in.
Here's someone that is a big fan. His name is Joe, and he says gearing is if not the quintessential component in power and torque application. Okay, so he's from Australia. He says the first car he owned was a Holden Torana stock. And I'm not sure I can picture that model car, but I know it's a General Motors car.
Yeah, it's a General Motors car, yeah. with that car, with that 6-cylinder 3-speed,
Okay.
he probably could have in Australia or something like this, he probably has a 410 gear. You know.
He held up to him until about 60 miles an hour, and then the other one would take off.
Oh, absolutely. There, you're right. Yeah. Good luck. just race him for the first 100 yards.
Yeah,
and take his money, or maybe he can take you out for lunch or something.
There you go.
Every time, because you had a 410 gear in your car.
Yeah.
And you went in first and second, third gear, and he was still in low gear.
Yeah, that's right. Well, in his case,
his car would go 140 miles an hour, and yours car would be good to go 80.
Right.
But boy, you went to 80, 0 to 80 real quick.
That's right. And
your brother took him 2 miles to get up to 80.
Right.
And you were back home already.
There you go. So gearing is a big deal.
Absolutely.
Okay.
If you're on the right gearing, you're not going to do anything. I don't care what kind of car you have.
That's right. I mean, half the time a tractor is good in the field. You can pull anything because of the gearing on it.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Okay. Here's a guy, Ken, is asking, have you ever used peach action injection in your sprint cars?
Yes, absolutely.
What do you like about it? What's that about?
They were bigger than normal.
Okay.
And they were easier to adjust and stuff, yeah.
Okay.
A lot easier, yeah.
So Pete Jackson was the way to go.
And we had some Pete Jackson injectors on a big block Chevy, too.
Did you?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are they still selling equipment?
I haven't heard from them for years.
Yeah, okay.
Probably not.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, most of our injectors now are made out of Denver.
Okay.
Kinsler injectors.
Okay.
And we actually have a set of injectors, I think, with a small block Chevy on our junior fuel car with 3-inch throttle valves. And it says Ray Carter Racing. That's my friend's name. Casted right in the injector.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you know it's his.
That was a few years ago, maybe 20 years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good deal. Well, thank you, Ken. That's a good reminder.
Good question.
Yeah. This is all about Oldsmobile V8s, starting with the 260 cubic inch all the way up to the 403. These were the small block Olds, right?
Yeah, the same motor.
Yeah. All the way up.
Same design on all of them.
Yeah, 307, 330, 350. Yeah. On an Oldsmobile rebuild, have you ever done any offset grinding on the crankshaft journals to use different rods? On
Oldsmobile.
No?
I didn't have. No.
Okay.
And most of the time we found Oldsmobiles, in the first place, the rod bearing should have been wider.
Oh.
It had a fairly skinny rod bearing.
Okay.
And we didn't think that the first thing that ever happened on Oldsmobile, the rod bearings went out of it.
Okay.
Had rod bearing problems if you had anything.
I see.
And it still has that oiling problem where it has the oil in the block where you had to plug the oil.
Was that in the small block Oldsmobile
all of them,
too?
yeah.
All of them?
The same, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So really a design motor, I think that without that, they did not design them to race or anything or do anything with it, even though we had a lot of boats, jet boats here in Arizona with that 455 motor in them.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they could buy that motor cheap from General Motors, the whole crate motor in those days, and put them on those brand new boats. And even after a while, anything that had an Oldsmobile motor, it ran fine for a good family ski boat, but don't try to start messing with it, tinkering with it.
Yeah.
Putting carburetors on it and bigger exhaust and trying to get RPMs on it, it would come apart.
I see.
And we never had anything. I think there was some of the Oldsmobiles, but I don't remember, possibly in road racing or something that was actually would live under some kind of racing conditions.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
but they were definitely not a big choice.
Not a big choice for any kind of high performance.
Okay. Now going back to racing though, Sam is asking a question: is offset boring allowed or not allowed in certain categories of racing?
I've never heard of it. Not allowed.
Okay. So inside that engine, if you're doing some extra machine work,
it's just cubic inches, however you want to get it. However you want to get it.
Okay. So let me just back up a question then.
So you could put a small bore in and offset grind it and get a longer stroke if you want to. Yeah.
So when you're racing, how do they check for cubic inches on your engine?
They have a P&G checker most of the time, was an instrument that pumped air. And they would take the temperature of your engine, fax that into the little computer there, and take a spark plug wire, take a spark plug out and put it in there, screw it in there, and then crank the engine over.
Okay.
It would tell you pretty close to what the compression was,
Okay.
and tell you something around close to the cubic inches.
Okay.
And they right away, they did that, they knew you had a Chevy motor or Ford motor, and they were close to either one compression or nothing.
When you're racing and they want to check your displacement, how do they check your engine displacement?
But the main thing I was trying to the last time I knew there was a P&G, was a pump thing with a cylinder with a hose on it,
Okay.
with some gauges on it. They checked the temperature of the motor, what's hot or cold.
Okay.
They factored that in on a thing, and they just put it in a spark plug hole and cranked it over.
Okay.
It would tell you how much air it pumped. So all they was comparing was the cubic inches of the motor times one cylinder times 8, and the
Okay.
weight of the car. So most classes are cubic inches to the weight of the car. The car weighs whatever it weighs, 3,000 pounds or something.
Right.
That would put you in a B class or whatever it is. They didn't care how you got it. There's no way they can tell how you got it
Okay.
until they took a cylinder head off and measured it.
It's just the volume of air
It's just
moving.
the volume of air.
Okay.
So
So,
it's someplace close, and that's all they were concerned with.
okay.
And then of course, you always, if they ask you, then you had to tell him the truth, how much cubic inches it is. And you always told him the truth.
Yeah, you can't fudge that one.
Oh, no, and still be friends.
Right. Now, I thought I heard someone say there was someone that would try pushing the edge of that a little bit by actually boring out one bank of the engine a little bit more that they probably won't check. They'll check with the easy
They
side.
could do that.
Someone might do that.
Yeah.
But then you've
And
got to...
Chrysler used to. They had a lot of 20 over pistons.
Really?
I had a bunch of Chrysler 426 Hemi in the early 64, 65, 66 cars
Okay.
because it was 30 thousandths. That's the limit. If you had 30 thousandths and honed it out, they'd throw you out.
Really?
Yes, they were that picky. In those days, even checking valve spring pressure. Take a valve spring off and let's put it in the machine here and see how much pressure's on it, throw you out.
Wow.
Valve spring pressure. That was when Chrysler was involved. But they made 20 over pistons so we could get a 426 Chrysler Hemi piston, 20 over.
Okay.
Then you could hone it out a little bit and machine the engine several times.
Okay. That's why they started with 20, not 30.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
At 30, you're at the end of the road already.
It's the end of the road already as far as NHRA was concerned.
Right. Interesting.
They were a little picky then.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, very picky. Okay. Well, that's pretty
I'm sure
good.
they are picky now.
Yeah.
I haven't run a car through the tech for a long time.
Right. Yeah, it's been a while now.
Yeah.
All right, so the next question is from Laird, and he wants to know, it's just your opinion, what do you think of the CVT transmissions, these constant variable transmissions that never really shift?
I hate them.
You hate them?
Yeah, a while back, there was the guy that, one of our core people comes in and sells us used motors. He had about 6 or 8 in the back of his pickup truck.
Okay.
Those gears, I said, what's wrong with these? They look like brand new third member posit tractions.
Oh, yeah.
He said, well, there were those CVT transmissions, you can't rebuild them.
Wow.
He said at the time, they were all on back order. So the dealers had cars parked out back with a bad transmission. So I don't know whatever happened to them, but I don't think I'd be willing to buy a car with that transmission in it.
Right.
Some people might love them, but I don't know. They said it was always a perfect you were in a perfect ratio.
Yeah.
All the time you were driving that car, it had to be perfect
Yeah.
for RPMs and road RPMs and road miles per hour.
You're right.
Of course, it was perfect, but
Yeah, they were, I think most people that liked them for gas mileage, I think, or power,
or
both,
something.
whatever.
I drove one a couple times, but it was kind of foolish.
Mm-hmm.
It was like driving a big rubber band or something,
Right?
or something else. But,
Yeah. Well,
but
there we
again,
go.
that I don't think you can rebuild them, and I don't know. I've never had one that I should have taken one of these out of this guy's truck and tore it apart and see what made it work.
Yeah, but you haven't
So
done
I
that
don't
yet anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go, Laird. That's his answer.
So
Next
that's my
question.
opinion, anyways.
Yeah. Well, that's all. That's fine.
Yeah.
Here's someone that's asked a few other questions. Can you ask Ed what my ring gap should be on a small block 350? I've got 60 over file fit rings. It's for a dirt track car in a factory class. So what kind of ring gap will you put in it?
Well, our ring gaps are still, I mean, we used to say 4 thousandths or something for every inch of bore.
Okay.
That went out a long time ago with today's oils and stuff, and buying that top ring, I would probably, and it don't make any difference if it's 28 or 29 thousandths on a ring, 4-inch ring.
Okay.
The end gap in that thing it ain't gonna run any better 28 or 29.
Okay.
Or 30 or 31.
Okay.
I asked the rig people one time, an engineer. I asked him about that, and he kind of scolded me a little bit how old I was when I talked to him about so much for every inch of gap, inch of ring, 4 thousandths. That'd be 16 thousandths. He says, "You must be an old man." Or something. So, anyways, 25 to 30 on the top ring.
Okay.
And maybe it was 24. 23 or 25, somewhere along in there. But if you grind one a little bit more, don't throw it away.
Okay.
If it happens to be, because it's real easy to grind those things.
Right.
And you grind it just a little bit longer, and it's going to change the gap pretty quick.
Right.
But always on the end of the ring, once you found it, is dress it off.
Okay.
Get all those burrs off the end of that ring, on each
make
end
sure
of that
there's
ring.
no edges on
No
there.
edges on it, yeah. That's a most thing. And the factory guy told me, he said, but we'll leave that a little bit up to Total Seal too.
Yes.
Our friends at Total Seal, and they have some things, and they're pretty picky on their ring end gap.
Right.
But they're talking about something that goes 10 grand
Yeah.
and gets hot right now.
Right.
And I don't know how much those motors get hot. I don't think there's any way you can test how hot that ring gets
Right.
in a top fuel car going 330 miles an hour.
Right. But it's going to be hot.
Yeah, and how much gap they have. And so they started gapping them and marking them somehow and found out how much that ring, I'm sure somebody's doing that. Take the ring out right away and see if it touched or not,
All right.
or how close it touched.
So what happens when they touch?
They break.
Okay. What happens when they break?
Then you have parts all over the track.
There you go.
Sometimes rings will stop coming out the tailpipe.
Oh, have you actually seen that?
Yes.
Oh boy.
Yes. Yeah, rings and pistons coming out the tailpipe. Yeah, that's out the header, yeah.
Wow. That would be awful. Okay.
So anyways, that's each guy to his own, and again, we gap our rings all time.
Yeah.
And even we gap our rings and even a general overall when we're machining motors here. We have one guy that assembles our motors, generally our OEM type motors, and he gaps those rings all the time and plays with them. Even the box of rings, the top ring could be different gaps.
Yeah, I've noticed.
So he has to sort out each ring,
Yep.
the top 8 rings, and checks them. Every one of them, and if they're okay, he puts them on
Yeah.
and gaps them. Don't leave one ring in there unnoticed.
Right. You check them all.
Check them all.
Yep. Okay.
Even our rod bearings and main bearings, check them all. Who knows what they'll put in that box.
Right.
You may get 7 standard bearings or 7 10-unders, and one is a weirdo, odd. So when you put a motor together, spend some time.
Yep. Yeah, it's worth it.
It's always worth it, yeah.
Okay, great. Here's the next question from Bert. He says he used to stroke a 348 or 409. We've talked about that engine a few times. By using a 396 or a 454 crank, using it as a cheap way to add cubic inches. Have you ever messed with that?
Hey, turn the mains down. That's expensive.
Okay.
To turn the mains down, and I hope he turned down, well, he can do it if he wants to, the front snout. The 348 crank is the same as the 350 Chevy.
Is it really?
Yeah, and the 454 is a larger diameter.
Okay.
So
The
he wants to do that, and then he ends up with a front seal. Probably if you don't turn that down and put a 350 type balancer on it.
Okay.
So he's got a lot of machine work and whatever he's going to do with this 348 motor.
What do you do with how does a 396 crank work with that?
It's the same almost.
Is it almost the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we can turn some 396 cranks down and put it right in a 348
Okay, that's what he's
or
talking
409.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they're real close.
Yeah. So they're close enough that a little machining gets them in
No,
there.
a lot of machining.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Fair enough. Next question here is, and this is more an old days question about 292-6 and the Ford 300-6. Okay. He says he'd be interesting to have Ed's description of how those two six-cylinders could be modified for racing before harmonics destroys them, especially since I've raced a 300 Ford 6 across Mexico while competing against 292 Chevy-powered 6s. So he's encountered both.
When I think about that,
Yeah, what do you think about those?
probably the Ford one.
Yeah, okay.
Chevrolet didn't finish the race.
Okay. What was the weak spot on those?
I don't know, they just harmonic difference and stuff. And the 292 Chevy was just an unbalanced motor for some reason. The bore and the stroke and all that stuff in them. And I have one sitting right there,
Okay.
a 292 that we used to race and drag race it in a Chevy truck. And we set the national record. And I think we lowered the record about 5 miles an hour or something. And the stick shift, we had a 4-speed in it, an automatic, and a Chevy truck, and a 6-cylinder. The motor's still sitting here.
Really?
But we lowered the record in both of them. We took it all apart and put the truck back to stock.
Did you really?
The guy went away. But the 300 Ford 6 is a lot more durable motor.
Okay.
And we see them in the mail trucks and UPS trucks, I think, and
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff's got that Ford 306 in
Yeah,
it.
almost endless applications.
Yeah, and we do them every day. We we're in our shop right now. And we have a late model. I say we have the largest engine rebuilder in Phoenix.
Do you
We know
really?
that.
Yeah.
With many motors that we do. And I think we have probably 3 or 4 of those 306s right now.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
they come from the airport
Okay.
in the tug motors
Okay.
that pull the airplanes around and stuff.
Yeah. Real popular for industrial things.
Yes, for industrial. And again, I think we probably have 3 or 4 in the shop right now being rebuilt.
Huh. Okay.
Some of those we've had back, the same motors back a couple times.
Yeah. Rebuild them again. Let them go back to
rebuild
work.
them again, yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
So they're a good motor.
All right. Well, crazy old field mechanic. There's your answer. That's what Ed thinks.
Yeah.
Trapper Aaron. He's asking about the push button transmission. So we're going back to those old Chrysler
Okay, we'll do that.
push button. And he's saying, so the buttons just engaged or disengaged the 1-2 and the 2-3 shift solenoids? Is that what they did? Do you know what those buttons did on the?
It's had a cable.
Okay.
There's a cable. I have a push button hanging right there.
Okay. Well, we should.
And I have some push buttons.
Okay.
And they went into a little box about this big, maybe a 2x2 box about 6 inches long,
Okay.
and had different levers inside. And when you push one of them, this would click that, and click that. And the next one would click that one. And I want to click this in here and move the cable in notches.
Okay.
And the cable went around the transmission and hooked up just generally on that cone on the there and had the detent.
Okay.
Click, click, click. So
All
there was
right.
no solenoids.
Okay.
There was no electric solenoid. It was all manual push buttons.
Okay.
And you had to adjust on the transmission, you had a little wheel about this big around with a bunch of holes in it and threaded on the cable. And you could spin that wheel around and pull the cable in and out. And mainly it was so simple to take the neutral starting switch out
Okay.
and line it up in neutral and reverse. And that neutral starting switch would contact that electric switch.
Uh-huh.
Then you could start it.
Yep.
And then once that was engaged, the rest of them were all fine.
Okay. That was the reference place.
Reference point was the
Okay.
neutral starting switch. Yeah, it was easy to adjust.
Interesting.
It never came unhooked. I never seen one come unhooked.
Huh.
It had a little pin about this long on the end of the cable of a hollow pipe thing with a little hairline spring on it.
Okay.
And the other one had a needle in it, and you shoved it in and it hooked. If you took the neutral starting switch out, you could stick a little screwdriver in that hole and disengage that wire and pull the cable right out.
That easy.
So it was easy. It was really simple.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And inside the transmission was like a normal transmission?
Normal transmission. No electrical at all.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it was really a trouble-free type thing.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, Aaron, thanks.
The little box, the ship box, never wore out. I never had to repair them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
So it was always simple.
Tony's 2-Bit Garage. He says, a hydromatic, it's very good, much like how the Chrysler cars of the 60s and 70s used a rod connected to a throttle to set the line pressure in a transmission. via a variable line pressure valve. Have you played with those?
The TorqueFlite was one that had rod
right
linkage
to it.
that went down the transmission.
Yeah.
And it had a valve on it there that pushed the boost valve.
Okay.
And the more you pushed it down, the harder the transmission shifted.
Oh, it changed how it shifted
Yeah,
too?
it shifted. If you just eased on the throttle, the carburetor links just moved a little bit, it would shift just fine.
Okay.
But then the more you pushed it, the harder it pushed that valve down and run the line pressure from maybe 80 to 120. So if you were wide open throttle, it'd shift at 120, but plus the pressure then would let it shift until higher RPMs too. So instead of shifting it between 10 and 15, it would shift at 30 and 60. But really high pressure, and it all worked out fine.
Wow. So that's almost like having an occasional shift kit.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Wow.
Adjustable, progressive shift kit.
Progressive
Absolutely.
shift kit. That is amazing. I had no idea it worked like that.
And so the C4 transmission didn't do that.
All right.
The only thing the C4 was just downshift.
Okay.
And it had the same line pressure if you downshifted at 60 miles an hour as it did at 80.
Okay.
So sometimes the people just let that linkage off. If you want to just pull it in second gear at 60 miles an hour and pass somebody, all meant the same.
Just do the same thing.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Tony, thank you for that.
And that's the same thing you get in trouble with the 700 R4.
Okay.
The transmissions. That shifter, it's not so much difficult. People say, if you don't adjust it right, it's going to burn the transmission up.
Okay.
Yeah, if you don't adjust it at all.
Okay.
A little common sense. We drove one down the street the other day, and I told the young nephew over here, come with me. Let's go down the street and this road test this Chevy truck with a 700R.
Yeah.
And we just went down the street a little bit and pretty soon I said, get out of here and move that shift cable, tighten that cable about 1/4 of an inch.
Okay.
And that just same thing. Set variable bit. The higher RPMs it does on a 700R, the harder it shifts. And it moves the RPMs up from shifting at 10 and 15 to maybe 20 and 30. And we moved it 1/4 of an inch, just put it on there, and it shifted so perfect after that.
No kidding. Wow.
So you just have this. It's nothing, and I wouldn't worry about it if I didn't hook it up at all, and you started running the transmission real hard. Of course you're going to burn up because you got no line pressure.
Yeah, right.
The more acceleration you put in it, the more higher the line pressure.
Okay.
And they'll put out sometimes maybe 120 instead of 80. Yeah. Yeah. All good.
All right. Thank you for that question, Tony. Such deep knowledge of mechanics. That's a compliment, Ed.
Okay.
Amazed at your knowledge. He says, I love the stories of the pre-1980 cars. Do you have any stories about the 30s or 40s models made for racing, like the Willys Fraser, the DeSoto, Buick, Olds, Mercs? Any memories of racing any of those?
Maybe. A little bit. I was younger then.
You were younger then. Yeah.
I remember I went to neighbors a little bit. This was in a little town in Ohio.
Yeah.
I took the torch and cut the fenders, half the fender off on a lot of 32s, 34 Fords and Plymouth. And they were racing Plymouth. And one of the guys had a Hudson with the 2 carburetors on.
Yeah.
And he would normally beat a flathead, no problem at all.
What about the Willys? Did you have any of those?
Willys, we didn't have much of Willys. There wasn't the Willys motors. There were 4 cylinders and maybe the Willys 6-cylinder came on, a Jeep Wagoneer or something.
Yeah.
Later on I think they had a flathead.
Okay.
But never anything on that. Nothing any competitive, but the Dodge and Chrysler probably was the same motor.
Yeah.
Some of the Dodge motors are a little bit bigger. And the flathead, you could do a lot of stuff to a flathead. And play around just like they do now, carburation and all the race cars were all dirt track. We didn't drag race them then.
Right.
But you can get them to rich the carburetors up, drill the jets out, and get the timing where it's supposed to be. And you know, you can make some good improvements over a stock motor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess
mill the head, you always mill the head.
I guess the 6-cylinders were easy to flow through too, because instead of a V8, you had everything.
Yeah, more accessible to work on.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were a lot easier to work on than a V8.
Yeah.
And I was probably 13, 14, 15 then.
Yeah. Back in those days.
There's a whole bunch of hillbillies out there trying to win a race.
They were trying all kinds of things.
All kinds of things, whatever you could figure up.
Can you think of anything people would try that
didn't work?
That didn't work, yeah, that you thought, what are they thinking? No? You're focused on what did work, I think.
We found out basically what did work.
Right. The whole thing is try stuff until you find something.
Yeah, try stuff, yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
A lot of fun.
All right. Well, Ed, thanks for sharing your thoughts on this stuff.
Okay, good. Thank you.
It's really good. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you guys for joining us again and writing in your questions. And we'll see you on the next one, too.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, Ed. Hey, thank you guys for supporting the channel. And I know you all love Ed Smith a lot, and he is a character and a great guy. So now we have some hats, shirts, jackets, hoodies available. edsmithspeed.shop.